All right, we are now ready for we're ready for our second panel now. We have Meinert Hansen and Guy Sprung. Meinert was the art director for Myst IV, and Guy, of course, was Achenar. And then Ace is going to be moderating this one. I will be gathering questions from the audience, so we'll just do it the same way we did with Anacat. So once we start taking questions, just raise your hand. And I will hand it off to Ace.
So, is this thing on? Okay. So, I guess to start, sorry, last minute jitters, gotta love them. Hi, so, why am I freezing up? So, I guess we could start with, how are y'all doing?
We have to talk into the microphone. Hi, everyone.
Yeah,
Absolutely. So I gather Patrick was here. He had his Expos shirt on. That's nostalgia. I have my Canadien cap on. That just, that's my loyalty there. So I hope nobody's a Boston fan here. Oh, sorry. That's it. I'm walking out.
Yeah, and I'm a Montrealer. I've been here all my life as well, I traveled a little bit for work, but mostly here the whole time. I have never met you. I've only seen you in the game. I was sequestered up in the 5th floor of the art directing section of the game, so I didn't get to mingle with the actors. I was just drawing all the time, and. Yeah.
For 20 years, I lived in the same block as the Ubisoft main office. I didn't even have to cross the road to go to the auditions. It was very convenient. Yeah. It's in the Plateau district of Montreal, which is where the cool people are, and and if you're going for coffee. The wannabes go to Café Olímpico, but the real people go to the Portuguese Social Club. Okay, so just so you now know the bottom line of Montreal here.
Yeah.
Great information to know. So I guess we'll start off with the. Oh, right. Sorry. Wow. Kind of drawing a blank here. I apologize.
What does an art director do on this? I'm sorry. I'm not a huge video game. I don't play them a lot, so I'm kind of Pollyanna here. What does an art director do on a video game like Myst?
Well, for me, Myst IV was my very first time art directing, and I had worked as a concept artist and designer for television shows and for animation. I worked in animation for 15 years before going into live action, and so the process of art direction is getting the visual language. How does the game visually work on every level? In other words, you have to go through the process of design. This comes first from the writing. You take the writing and the story, build up visuals from the writing and the story. You have a team of people, a team of different artists and designers and graphic designers, etc. And you give them a kind of a framework, or like a catalog of visual input and references and everything else. And since this was a game that already existed, there was a lot of material to build on and say, okay, this is the foundation of what we're going to do, but we're going to do something completely different. And so we had to reinvent the worlds, but keep it feeling like the original games, and it's kind of like that in movies as well.
Okay, stop me if I'm asking questions that have already been answered. But this image, for instance,
Yeah.
how does one arrive at that? How did you arrive at that?
That's a long one. That was the age that I was the most in charge of. I actually was only on the game for a year. For personal reasons, I had to leave. My father had a stroke, and I had to take care of him, and I kind of burnt out, and so I had to leave after the first year. So I missed. There's that word. So I missed Myst. So I had to leave after this particular level was finished. And the way this one started, it started with one image from the previous game. And so I said, okay, I'm going to look at the architecture and design of the entire world, see what kind of design elements were used. And in this case, it tipped towards Art Nouveau. So that was my starting point. I was looking at Art Nouveau. I was looking at late 19th century designs in Europe that built on the organic lines instead of the streamlined lines. And there's a little bit of what you would call steampunk at the time. But I want to stay away from the steampunk vernacular because that just becomes too mechanical. It needed to feel warm and inviting and friendly, but at the same time, it was built on stuff that's familiar to us, but different. So I did a lot of sketching and designing using lots of circular patterns. I put together kind of like a reference Bible of different colors and different design shapes that would represent different parts of the houses. And then I just, in many ways, winged it. And to get to this, I redid the map about 18 times from scratch, over and over and over again, because every time we come up with a map, and as some of the others who are here will attest, we had very long discussions about the puzzles. And you'd say, well, if he pulls a lever here and then the bridge moves here, oh, now they're going to get stuck because that person has to come back and they have to do this and that. Okay, we can't put that bridge there, take it out. And so, okay, so there's a staircase that goes down here. No, the staircase is not going to work because that's going to move this way and we have to get over there. But what about this part? Okay, let's move the dome back this here. We'll replace this module here and we'll put this here. Yay, everything's working. No, it isn't, because now we need the energy system to be started up for the wheel, you know, and it went on and on like this for like months. But I enjoyed the challenge, and when we finally started to arrive at what I think was the final design of Pomana, I got a huge block of clay and built a clay model. And I wish somebody had taken pictures.
Wow.
There might have been some pictures taken of it, but I made a clay model because I had to visualize it, like get down right into it and look at it as a miniature to see what it would be like to actually walk around in the place. And it was huge. It was like it took up, you know, like the size of a table, and it was about this tall, and you know, it was a big mess. And I think it even that wasn't finished. It wasn't even finalized. We've got to scrap this, and we have to do this. But
did you paint the clay too, or like was it?
No,
colored?
no.
It was just clay colored.
It was just clay colored.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, and I think there was like, you know, sticks in there for bridges and, you know, little wooden, you know,
Okay,
popsicle
I
sticks.
know you could build a few more bridges in Montreal too, because I got stuck in the traffic. If
Yeah.
you could do a couple of quick there for me, that would be great.
Yeah.
And I think there may be one
Yeah,
in
put your-
Baltimore. I think there may be one in Baltimore too that you could build as well.
Oh God. Yeah. So that process, despite the fact
Yeah.
that it was done many times, I enjoyed the challenge so much, and it just got better and better as it went along. And like anything, when you're visualizing something, and especially when you're working on something as complicated as this, this was a revelation for me. Okay, enough of the puns. It was a revelation for me because unlike other projects I had worked on, a video game, everything has to be designed from scratch, like the pens on the table, the type of paper that they have on the desk. There's literally every element has to be designed. And to me, after working on a video game and then going into movies, it was like, oh, I don't have to design that stuff. A props person is going to do this. Oh, location scout is going to find the rooms. You don't have to, actually design it from scratch. But it gave me a stronger sense of how to design everything from the ground up. Yeah. Do you have any questions?
I have to. Sorry, I keep forgetting about the microphone.
Yeah.
I have to admit, I definitely had my ears perk up a bit, especially at the clay part. I really love that, thought process, just getting that tactile, 3D kind of right in front of you type of thing. That sort of. Okay. I'm curious. Was there any specific real world inspirations behind any of the design elements that you would particularly like to point out?
If I look at this picture here, not really.
Well,
there's elements of it, this is 2003, right? 2003, 2004. The internet, you couldn't look up as many things as you could now, in terms of reference. So I'm a big collector of art books, and I had books on architecture and design, and I would look at things, and I'd see a curve of an element in a railing, and I'd say, that would be good for Myst, that kind of thing. And so there's bits and pieces maybe, but for the most part, I try to just immerse myself and design from there. Yeah.
Would anyone in the audience jump?
So, you're talking about the design. So, Myst IV came out, it was 20 years ago now. So, technology has really changed in the past 20 years. So, this really applies to both of you. So, how has design changed with new technology? And, and for Guy, too, Myst IV used full motion video, which isn't really a thing anymore, and you've been involved in motion capture. How has that changed how you approach recording and acting? And so either one of you can go first, but
I'm not quite sure what the question is, but if you're asking me about acting,
how transitioning to using motion capture has changed an acting process.
It's all. I'm going to answer your question by a long circuitous route. Okay, I'm mainly a theater person. I actually do more directing than acting. I actually I have acted, but I'm more of a director. So if we're talking about acting in a video game, then I have to answer for you first what I think acting is, okay? So I like I say, excuse me, I'm taking the long route around here. And I'm going back to Shakespeare, two gods, Shakespeare and Stanislavski. So Shakespeare, as we know, was the greatest playwright in the English language, and maybe more that we know of. He lived to see 1600. Stanislavski, if you know, if you're into acting, you know that he's the Russian theorist who, on whose theories, basically acting theories, all of what we now call acting theory is based. Even the Alexander or Grotowski or everything has originally come from the explorations and theories of Konstantin Stanislavski, and he saw 1900. So there's 300 years between the two of them. Now, and I've just been for myself, going back to some of Shakespeare because I'm really puzzled as to what the Elizabethans thought acting was. There were no manuals, unlike Stanislavski, who wrote journals every day about his manuals and theories. And the thing is that at the end of the 16th century, the Elizabethan theater was just, it was exploding a little bit like Mac computers at the end of the last century and into now. And there were so many different terms for what they called acting because they were still trying to figure out what exactly acting was. So initially, the old term was playing, which had a lot to do with bombast and Bottom in Midsummer Night's Dream or whatever. They were even in Hamlet, they're called players. They're not actors. They're players because they huge melodramatic explorations of speeches. There's another term that was just coming into view, which is called personate, which is really interesting to me because it implies something more naturalistic. Okay, we don't use it anymore. And towards the tail end of the 16th century, anyway, stop me if I'm not going anywhere with this, but I'm trying to answer the question on what acting in video games is. Okay, so personate was this fascinating term that we haven't really explored a great deal, and then we come to acting. Now, what's interesting about the concept of acting as a term for what we call performing on a stage is that the OED, the Oxford Dictionary, says that in 1598 was the first written use of that term for what we call acting, 2 years before Shakespeare wrote Hamlet. And of course, the central theme of Hamlet is to act the revenge and to act a play and a part. So there are two plays in one. This is something I've been sort of exploring for a while. So on the one level, you have the revenge tragedy, but buried in a very Elizabethan cryptic fashion, you actually have the internal journey that an actor has to make in order to achieve the part. Now, here's where it gets interesting between Stanislavski and Shakespeare. Stanislavski's whole theory was to prepare an actor with voice, body, inspiration, imagination, to get to the point where, as he calls it in Russian, I am being, я ем, okay? That was the moment when an actor was experiencing the part, was totally in it. And today we call it being in the moment or dropping in or, it being in your body. But it's the moment when, and I'm quoting Stanislavski here, the words speak themselves, okay, as opposed to an actor having to memorize them. And it's my belief that Shakespeare, this was his theory too. So what he shows in Hamlet is internally the journey that an actor has to make to that last moment in Act 5 when he acts the part by killing Claudius, okay? So that journey, and I'm not going to go into too much detail, but Fortinbras, just before the end, says, take Hamlet to the stage, because had he been put upon it, would look to have been quite royal. He says it, take him to the stage. The actor is now ready to play the part. And here's where it's get interesting for me anyway. If you talk to actors about this moment of being in the moment, of experiencing that Stanislavski, there is some of us, and that includes me to an extent, talk about an almost spiritual experience where that moment of inspiration, where you disappear into the part, is something higher, okay? For me, the way it manifests itself is there becomes this other brain. I split into two. And I can feel I'm saying lines, I'm playing with an actor, and I'm saying the lines, but at the same time, this other higher power here knows what lines are coming next and is actually talking to me as I'm acting in the part and says, okay, now you're going to take it really slow, now you're going to look at the eyes, now you're going to get loud. It's a really weird schizophrenic trance, okay? And that's being That would be Stanislavski, I am being. And it's not a coincidence to be or not to be. That's the central theme of Hamlet, because the subtext is of the play is, how do you act a part? How do you be the part? Now, Stanislavski, being Russian, spoke a lot about the soul. There was a lot of religiosity in it. In fact, the I am being phrase is Old Slavonic, and it has to do with moment of touching God. Okay? And Hamlet, just before the end, there's a divinity that guides our end, rough hew it as we will. He's talking about that moment of reaching, of something higher actually inspiring the work as an actor. That does not happen when you're working on video games. So here for Achenar, the problem is, as an actor, you need to know the backstory, right? You need to have actors to play with. You need to rehearse it. You don't get that in a video game. As an actor, and the artwork is the center of Myst IV. The artwork and the puzzles. As an actor, you're very much an afterthought, and I never knew who the director was. We shot in this huge Mel cinema. It's as big as a football field, as far as it seemed to me as an actor. Most of the time, I was on my own. Everything is green screen, right? And so you walk in, and the computer technology and the art directors, they've been working for 2 years developing this. Okay, at the last minute, let's bring the actor in. And basically, I was never really told the story. I had no idea what I was doing. It was sort of a bit of a character thing. Do this, say these lines. So you learn your lines, and then there's a structure in the middle of this football field, and you climb a ladder, and you run towards this way, and you say, yeah, I'm crazy, but I'm going to steal this life stone, and we're going to save the world or whatever. I had no idea what the story was or what I was doing, and nobody really bothered to explain it. So you're out there on your own, and like I say, there are no I am being moments. In fact, I think one could probably do, in addition to maybe explaining things more, and it's a really complicated story. So how could I come in after 2 years of development and understand all the highways and byways and the ins and outs and everything? There's no way an actor would be able to do that. But a simple thing, an actor, for instance, needs that connection to the earth. I was just given a bunch of ratty sneakers. Achenar would never wear sneakers, right? He would wear boots, and that's the connection an actor has to the earth. So I never really felt I was there. I was just saying the lines and doing as best as I could. Obviously, I was trying my damnedest to give people what they wanted. It is a little bit strange. In that, yes, I'm climbing up this thing and running on a rather rickety scaffolding, and nobody is watching you, right? There's 30 people, technicians, 30 monitors, and they're all facing this way, away from me, right? So nobody's even watching me. And then at the end, they say, okay, cut. And then there's a long discussion, and you're going, oops, how did I do? And they say, excuse me, Mr. Sprung, could you, when you climb up the ladder, could you climb up 2 inches to the right, please? Yes, sir. And so that was it. And I never got to play a scene with Cirrus, and we did have one. I did have one day with my sister where we actually played, but again, most of it was to camera and abstract. and so it's a really tough thing. In terms of motion capture, the difference is that the problems are different, but you still feel the same. I mean, in motion capture, everybody's looking elsewhere. You've got all these buttons on you that are reflecting things, and you're run around like mad and pretend to stab people or whatever, knock them over the head, and it's not real. So it's a really tough assignment, to keep your focus and to give it everything you can without it being organic in a way, But like I say, the actors, quite rightly, in this kind of a situation, are just the afterthought, and the real people are the art directors and the puzzle and the storyline and so on. Anyway, so I took the highways and byways. There you go.
Yeah.
That was an excellent answer.
I would. I just want to add that I remember at the time, in many ways, there were very few games that actually had actors in them. Actors talking and stuff. So you were in the baby steps of it. I think at that point they were going, well, we got to get somebody to act. How do we do that? They didn't think in terms of doing it cinematically in the same way that you would structure a film or whatever, where the people who work in film have worked with actors for years, whereas in video games, everything's brand new. And that was, for Ubisoft too, I think it was a new thing, because I remember even at the time, and you guys could correct me if I'm wrong, but it was like reinventing the wheel when they made this game, in many ways. And so there were a lot of people who were green to what we were doing. Ubisoft had a reputation for doing a particular kind of game, and suddenly they're doing this nodal thing with boxes and puzzles, and I remember the first day I was there, I was brought into a room and I was given the backstory of the game. Now, you all know how complicated the world of Myst is. All right? Imagine, it was George Chastain, I think it was. Yeah. Anyway, he said, okay, I'm going to give you the backstory of this. He talked to me for an hour and a half, giving me the backstory of Myst, and I walked out and I said, I don't think I can do this. This is so complicated. I don't know. This guy and this guy's, and he's dead. And it's stuff that I never even got when I was playing the games. Now I played the games. I played Myst. I played Ribbon. I played Exile. Well, did I play? No, I played Exile after I started because I needed a better computer. Anyway, so anyways, but it was overwhelming that there was so much backstory, and I feel sad for you that you didn't get the backstory enough to be able to understand who these characters were. But at the same time, I can imagine if you were sat down in a room with somebody who was like, diehard Myst historian, like, giving you this backstory. Anyway, so that's interesting.
I would have loved to have got the backstory. Then it probably would have gone into overtime, time and a half,
Yeah. That's, yeah.
I have to say, despite the lack of direction, I really do think you knocked it out of the park. Would you like to take a question?
Yeah. Anybody in the audience have? All right. Oh. Philip? Wait. Yeah. Philip.
Just a quick question. I'm Philip Shane, and I'm making a documentary about Myst. I've been doing it for a little while, and it's, as I said to Guy earlier, it's very cool to meet both of you. Just a quick question. Your answer can be as long a winding road as you like, because I think we all love it. That's how this convention has lasted 25 years. So we like long and winding roads. For each of you, what did it mean for you in your life and your career just when you got this particular gig at that time?
I think once you get that kind of a job, a big part in one video game, I think that's it. So I never until 20 years later in Persian Times of Sand, I got another big part. But I think after that, you're basically okay. We've had you moving on. For Achenar, I actually can't remember. I suppose I did. Yeah. Yeah.
For me, it was a really big deal because Myst was the first true video game that I actually played, as all of you have probably experienced, it was a game that made you feel smart because it's like, yeah, I solved it. It's a puzzle. And, anyway, I'd worked in animation for quite a while, but I got into animation because I wanted to get into the world of live action cinema and do, design for film. And I worked for 15 years in that, every year saying, okay, one more year in animation, then I'm going to get into live action. Okay, one more year. But, it was hard to find work in this business. Anyway, when I got the call for Myst, I'd already worked on a few TV shows and stuff, live action stuff, and some documentaries and things like that. And I actually saw the ad for looking for an art director. I don't know who gave it to me and said, hey, they need an art director at Ubisoft or something. And when I came in to the interview and found out it was about Myst, I just was like, oh my God, so I was very excited because visually I love the design in the world, and so it was a big deal for me, and it was also a big deal because it was my first job as an art director. And the way it changed my life is that it opened doors for other types of projects. I realized, okay, I was pursuing film, but hey, here's something that allows me to design and create a world, and then I can experience it. And I thought that was really, really, really neat. And subsequently, I ended up working in other games. I worked on Batman Arkham Origins, and that was a completely different experience. But then moved on to, live action films like 300, Spiderweb Chronicles, and Arrival, and a couple of other movies. But I always look back fondly on this one because it was also because I was I'm mostly working towards digital artwork. It was the last project where I did so much work on paper, just drawing on paper. And subsequently after that, I still work on paper. It doesn't matter, but the fact that I got a chance to, break out the watercolors and break out the pencil and do that was really special.
I reiterate something very obvious. I was so happy to get something that wasn't, Grand Theft Auto or, shoot 'em up Swill or something like that. No, I was really, really happy to be working on the Myst story.
We have a question. This one is online. This is from Redwood Road. It's probably more for Meinert. The folks on the previous panel mentioned how this first location was meant to look both warm and inviting at first, and then cold and daunting after some time changes. Did you apply similar multi-level atmospheric thoughts to the other locations, especially since both Spire and Haven are beautiful, but also so spooky in parts?
Well, considering that almost all the designs I did for the subsequent ages went through changes, and by that time, once I'd left, I think it was certainly Sebastian, who was here earlier, worked on Spire, and there was there were a couple of other artists who worked on other levels. I can't really say so much about that because so much of what I did went through major changes. Like, for instance, the Spire Age, it was in ice, and it went down through these honeycomb caverns and all kinds of things. And then the last age Serenia. It wasn't even called that. I called it Octave at one point, and then it was called Tyne, and then it went through all these different iterations. It's so yeah. It's unfortunately I can't really. It's kind of does not apply. Yeah.
Take another question from the audience here. Yelly, you're the first panelist, huh?
Yeah. So, continuing on that topic, what were some of the, I guess, early variations of the ages that you remember? Like, I know you mentioned at one point something about Haven had an original design. I mean, could you go more into detail about like the early concepts for Haven or Serenia or
Sure.
Spire or Tabana even?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Before I answer that, I'll say that for all of you here, I brought in some original artwork from the game and some of the designs, so you'll get to see some of that up close and personal. For example, one of the before we went to Achenar's world, the original design was an island, and the island was jagged, very populated with mushroom-type plants and lagoons and swamps and everything else. And the island itself was just the vertebrae of one spinal column of some, deceased creature from millennia. Anyway, so that made it a very interesting kind of age to work on. The Spire was more like underground in the ice with, there was a traversal system, a joyride type thing where I designed, I got into monowheels, and I had this idea of doing a monowheel that was balanced on two sides with these crystals, and it went on tracks down and up and into different areas, and there were these tubes with valves that would make different sounds, and so it was very different. And the final age, which ended up being Serenia, or as we called it at the time, the main age, because we didn't have a name for it, and it was going to be the biggest age, which ironically it ended up being the smallest one, right? But it was again sort of a water-based island with a dam, an ancient dam, and all the buildings, you find all these circular buildings. What you don't realize is all the buildings are the gears for a hydroelectric power plant. And the people lived in this, and what you do is you would eventually discover a way to activate it, and everything in the village would spin and descend, and the other parts would raise, and then activate the power dam with the generators and everything. It was super ambitious and just absolutely ridiculously huge, and wouldn't have been able to do it, which is why I understand now, looking back at it. I thought, yeah, even for today's kind of games, this thing is a little bit too complicated. Yeah. So yeah, you'll see some pictures of that.
All right, this is also online. This is from Revelation Fan 10. This is for Guy Sprung. How did you tap into the nuanced world of Achenar, where he went from a ruthless sadist to a touched and later self-sacrificial son and brother? Oh, sorry. How did you tap into the nuanced world of Achenar, where he went from a ruthless sadist to a touched and later self-sacrificial son and brother?
Well, the bad guy with the heart of gold. That's
Basically.
That's just my nature. So, I didn't have. The bad guy with the heart of gold. That's my nature. I didn't actually have to do any great shape shifting at all.
Another one from here. Harley.
Hi. Speaking as someone who's dabbling in world design for Myst Online, and also is someone who's doing the character acting stuff for characters in that same game. I just, first off, I just want to say I appreciate all the work that both of you have done. It gives me a whole found appreciation for it, doing the stuff that I'm doing.
Thank you.
And hearing you guys talk about it. I guess from an art direction question, my main thing is how. Sorry, my brain is futzing on the phrasing of this. What was something from the Tamana area that you really, really liked that didn't quite make the cut?
That's a good question. There was, if you remember the game, you can actually see it here. You see, there's like a track on the ground underwater there, and there was like an elevator that went down. There was discussion of a submarine at one point. Didn't go very far, but I went, oh, we gotta have a submarine, because I love submarines. I love designing submarines, and I got very excited by that idea. And then it was, an elevator went down and just went along the track, and then went to the other part there, which is fine. I understand the limitations of the game. Again, we were aware of our limitations, and we were also not aware of our limitations to a certain extent, because we were trying to push the envelope as far as we could for many of these things. And so there were a lot of little bits and pieces that were really cool, that were kind of cut. The telescope thing, that's something that we did, that Patrick discussed earlier. I was hoping to see more celestial kind of things going on in it, but then again, there are so many things that get dropped in the process, and then you move on and you get other ideas, and some of them end up being better than the original ideas anyway. So, yeah. But I would say that was that one little bit. I do think I got very attached to the idea of a hydroelectric dam that thousands of years later is used as a village. I thought there was something interesting about that, and the fact that the people who populated this place, you learn, worked with animals that made sounds, and they had these big hats that were like tuning forks, and you'd hit them and they'd make a sound, and the animals would respond to that. And there were all kinds of crazy ideas. It was really fun.
I'm assuming the hydro dam, I mean, I don't know if one is aware, but Quebec has extensive hydroelectric dams, so I'm sure your imagination is fueled by the world there that you live in. I'm just curious myself, how are the decisions made? So you come up with all these crazy ideas, and then they shift along. How does a final decision get made?
That's a really good question. I mean, it varies from point to point in the game, but I think a lot of it has to do with, does it serve the story? Do the puzzles work with this particular part of the story? Does it physically bring you from point A to point B without too much complication? Those are the kind of things that bring it up. And I think story is like everything. Story is gold, and so we have to keep with the thread. If it starts to stray too far and it starts to go off into something too fanciful and doesn't move it forward, then
So was the story creator editor then sitting on top of you at all times? How did that work?
No, she was sitting. She's sitting right over there. And not really. No, I think there's a lot of collaboration, and as you know, video games are non-linear. They don't have the same kind of cut to the chase as you have with film or theater, obviously. And so
But could you maybe say they're multilinear as opposed to non-linear?
Yeah, I guess that's one way of putting it. Yeah, yeah. And we had a lot of fun discussions about it. That's for sure. And one of the things, of course, because the game is very focused on puzzle solving. We had some of the smartest puzzle creators I've ever met, to the point where it was always like, "Oh, could you guys scale it back? This is too hard. I can't. You gave me the solution. I can't solve it with the solution in front of my face." You know, and this happened a lot with the game. They were too smart, really smart. They had to be. You know. So, but.
I'm so happy you couldn't solve them either.
Yeah. Well, true confessions here. I never finished the game because I got stuck even with a walkthrough. So I'm embarrassed to say, maybe if I'd go back, because I became much better at games after. But I will. You know, I wish there was a way I could go back and play it. But I did get stuck and very frustrated. It could be just a timing thing too. It was okay. I did. You guys can cut that part out of the.
All right. Another question from online. This is Everett DePanger. Sorry if I'm butchering everybody's names. If you could use today's technology on Myst IV, what would you change?
Wow. Well, I love the idea of not having to point and click, and just walking through it. You know, that's for sure.
But for all the new technology, I don't think you'd want to change the artwork, would you? Because that's so effing brilliant. Like, right? So.
Well, integrate the actors better into the scenes. There you go. And have them really interact. Like, I don't know if you're familiar with a game called The Last of Us, where there's which is adapted into a very successful HBO series. That was all acting. You know, that was, you know, and that was a game changer in terms of games, because it's saying, okay, you can have people who are putting the performance of a lifetime into their work, you know, and if that's one thing we could change in the Myst games, where there's puzzle solving, but there is true interaction with the actors. I think that would be really amazing, and you know, this guy here, you know, this would be really incredible.
If there was one thing, technology or no technology, I thought at the time when I was carrying that life stone, it was kind of paper mache, and I assumed that it too was going to be, you know, technologically enhanced. It wasn't. So I would put my hand up there and say, can we change that stone into something with a little more gravitas?
All right. Have another question from the room.
So this is for Guy. Hi, I'm Thomas. So my question for Guy is, were you at all upset about the fact that your character dies in all three endings?
Good heavens, no! I'm very happy to sacrifice myself.
This is another question from Redwood Road. This is for Guy Sprung. This was inspired by your comments earlier. Do you promote your Stanislavski-based advice to your actors as a director as well? And has it helped them to better understand their roles?
Yes. I mean, I think the two work together. And as a director, and every director should act. I really believe that, so that they can understand what they're looking at. when they're watching an actor struggle and trying to create. And as I say, there are real actors, but I have acted. I'm not, Anyway, we won't dump on myself too much, but I really enjoy acting for sure. But I think I'm better at the conceptual, putting together a conceptual whole, and I love actors. I love watching that moment happen when something that they don't know. I worked with William Hurt on Richard III. And at the beginning of rehearsals, we were working with masks, with these comic half masks where you can speak. They're not the full mask, but an actor can disappear into it. I mean, masks are very connected, in many cultures to religion and to something higher entering into the body of the actor. And so we were, to start rehearsals, we were working with these half masks, and William is not he wasn't, dear William, he was not a great human being as a human being, but he was a fucking brilliant actor, right? He really, he shapeshifted inside in a way that was very special. And after one of these improvisations with the half mask, I went up to him just to discuss it, and he just took the mask off like this, and he had no idea where he was. He had no idea what he'd said. He had no idea what the scene was about anymore. He had gone into it so deeply that he was in a trance of some kind. And anyway, so yes, I'm fascinated by watching that, and I think that comes from trying to do it myself occasionally.
Any more from the room? Oh, yes, in back. Oh, sorry.
I think it was in the last panel, somebody had mentioned that there was an idea to have animals on Spire. I'm just curious if there were any serious discussions on that, especially since Spire is a decidedly not very fleshed out age. And beyond animals, what was your approach to trying to give that age something that was a little bit more of a fleshed out character?
When I was involved in it, it was pretty early on, so I didn't get a chance to design any animals at all. In fact, there was no discussion of animals that I can recall for that particular age. I dimly remember something about some buzzing insect at one point, but I think that was like a flash. But other than that, I don't remember anything about animals. It was cold and sterile and bereft of life. And in my recollection of it, it was kind of the antithesis of this. Yeah.
I believe there was. Oh.
My name is Salvalutis. I gotta say, watching, and with all due respect, Guy, watching Achenar waxing poetic about Hamlet and the theory of acting is gonna change the way that I see Myst IV from now on. But my question is, we never really got like a true introduction to you guys. So do you mind telling us, what you've worked on in the past, what projects you've done since then, a little bit about what you guys do?
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Meinert Hansen, and I like to draw. I've been working for 40 years plus in film and television and sometimes video games. I started out in traditional 2D animation, TV series, and after that went into live action. I worked on the very first steampunk TV series called The Secret Adventures of Jules Verne, which aired on Sci-Fi Channel and is subsequently unavailable anywhere. which is really weird. I was the key designer on that series. I designed all the vehicles and creatures and gadgets and everything like that. I had no idea. And again, here you go again. This was a new job for me. I had no idea that I was not necessarily supposed to design that much stuff for a TV show, but I did. And so it had my fingerprints all over it. That got me some work. Myst was the next thing after that. And then I worked on Mark Forster's film Stay with Ewan McGregor and Naomi Watts. Then and a young Ryan Gosling who was very shy and quiet and skinny. Can you imagine? And after that, I worked on 300, the Spartan. This is Sparta. Anyway, I was a concept artist on that, and then on the Spiderwick Chronicles, I worked a little bit on Riddick. I worked on TV series like Watchmen, and then did Batman Arkham Origins, a film called Upside Down, which don't bother. And then in the meantime, I was teaching. I taught at Dawson College since 2008, and I just retired in June. And while I was working at Dawson College, I also worked on Arrival with Denis Villeneuve, which is my favorite project of all time. I often say that if this is the last movie I work on, I will die happy. I subsequently worked on 7 other major projects, which all of them have NDAs, so nobody is ever going to see the work. And by the 7th project, I said, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. So I continue teaching, and I love the teaching. Was for me probably one of the most rewarding jobs I ever had. It was thoroughly satisfying and made me grow as a person, as an artist. Now I'm going to work on my own personal projects, which will not be NDA, hopefully. So that's where I'm at.
I'm a Montrealer, and I spent 4 years in London early on in my career, learning my craft. I really believe that you go from apprentice to journeyman, and eventually, and I will say that I think I'm at the master stage now, where I can now teach other apprentices. And as I say, I'm mainly a director, but so a couple of things that I've done in Toronto, for instance, I started in '83. There's an outdoor Shakespeare venue called Dream in High Park. It's actually the biggest outdoor Shakespeare venue in the world, and to date, 1.5 million Torontonians have enjoyed accessible and affordable Shakespeare in that venue that I created. We did some really, really fabulous productions in there. Romeo and Juliet with Paul Gross. I don't know if that means anything. He's one of our better known actors. I did a production of Midsummer Night's Dream in Russian at the Pushkin Theater. It ran for 11 years there in repertory. I didn't get any royalties. I've done a little bit of documentary filmmaking, and I ran a theater in Toronto for a while, and then here in Montreal for a while. I do still get some work as an actor in films. I was killed by Juliette Lewis in a film called The Thicket that's coming out in September. As soon as I'm killed, the opening credits run. So I'm kind of like the teaser granddad. And in terms of, because Ubisoft is here in Montreal, a lot of us English actors actually, pay the rent with working at Ubisoft in various games or others. So my most recent larger role was, as I say, in Prince of Tides, Prince of Persia, and it was a difficult shoot because the director was from Paris and I was having enough trouble doing a South Asian accent. And then the Parisian director, would try and give me line readings with his Parisian South Asian accent, and I found that a little confusing. But yes, give me the dagger. And at the moment, I'll accept any work that you can offer.
All right, I deliberately held on to this one until the very end. This is from Ivan K, a name I apparently have been mispronouncing for a very long time. I thought it was Iwank. Okay. All right, I had it right. This is more of a comment than a question. The actors in Myst IV did great work. All right, that is all the time we have. Thank you so much to Meinert and Guy.
It's been an honor.
Yes. And everyone, please stick around. We have another panel coming up soon with everyone. If your question didn't get answered in one of the first two panels, feel free to ask it in the third, because that's going to be a little more open-ended, kind of audience-driven, whatever you want to talk about.